Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Wanted to set the context for everybody's benefit, and this is focused around education. As everyone knows, education is more than a right. It's a pathway to dignity, stability, and empowerment. And yet, for millions of displaced children worldwide, education remains fragmented and inaccessible or entirely out of reach for many. According to UNHCR, more than 130 million girls and boys are out of school globally, and refugee children are 5 times more likely to be excluded from education. The challenges go beyond access, limited resources, trauma, and lack of digital infrastructure continue to isolate millions of young minds from learning opportunities. We are honored, we are delighted to have with us Rudayna Abdo, founder, CEO, and president of Thaki Foundation, a visionary leader who is transforming this reality through technology, sustainability, and collaboration. Recognized globally and the recipient of Visionary Leadership Best Practices recognition from Frost and Sullivan Institute, Rudayna combines her background in urban planning, creative leadership to champion circular education models, reusing technology, empowering teachers, and giving displaced children the digital tools they need to learn and thrive. In our session today, called Empowerment Through Education, Building Resilient Learning Systems for Displaced Communities, we will explore how innovation, partnerships, and compassion can come together to create a scalable, sustainable education ecosystem for children in crisis affected literally all over the world. So, with that quick background, Rudayna, thank you very much for joining. Welcome to this session.
Thank you very much for having me here, Arup. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor. Thank you.
Lovely. So, just to get started, I just wanted to understand from you what inspired you to start Thaki and how did your background in urban planning influence your vision for education access? This is very interesting. I'm personally inspired. I wanted to hear from you and I want to make sure the audience hears directly from you.
Super, thank you. Actually, right, I had a long career in urban planning, spanning across the globe. And if we cast back to 10 years ago, it was the Syrian refugee crisis that was very much in the forefront and really dominating the news at the time. And well, being the daughter of Palestinian refugees myself, and having been displaced during the Lebanese civil war as a child, I could feel the pain of this, and I could see how reading the statistics and just seeing the very painful news about children being out of school, losing out on their futures. And it was just a very painful realization that I felt that was getting too difficult to deal with just observing. And I felt I had to somehow to do something about that, which is what was the motive, the push behind starting Thaki.
Fantastic. And did you start this on your own or did you kind of bring some people together, like minded people together?
Well, the idea spurred, like many ideas, are probably influenced by so many different things and different events. And there were a few aha moments that brought the idea on. But I think what really touched me to my core was we were on a visit, a school vacation visit with with my children and other families in Istanbul, at the time in Turkey, and there were a lot of displaced Syrians over there. And there was, I remember one time just making contact with a woman and her child, and I had leftover sandwich that I didn't want to throw away, and I wanted to give it to her, and she just pierced me to the heart in the realization that when I looked at her, it was as if I was the first person to see her. That all of this, it was just so painful for me to realize how people are put into circumstances beyond their control and entirely out of their control, and they cannot get themselves out of it because of the circumstances into which they're put. So that was the emotional momentum to start Deki. And I had it was my idea, but nothing is done alone. I had so many people who whose mission it resonated. They liked what I was doing, and came to help, whether it was with tech help, with education help, because I was stepping into a space that I professionally had nothing to do with. I mean, I was stepping into education. I don't have a background in education, forcibly displaced communities, technology. Yes, I've used all of these things and they're personal to me, but I don't have any professional background in those. So I was really seeking a lot of expertise in tech and education, and just so many really rallied behind it. But I was the sole founder. I didn't have a co-founder, but slowly built a team around me. First, it was all volunteers, and then after 3 years, I think I got my first little grant, and then things started moving from that point, and to be able to hire a team and become more of an established
Fantastic.
organization.
Fantastic. Very inspirational. I wish more people are like you who, look at humanitarian crisis and around that build foundations like you've done. Fantastic. Very inspired. Thank you so much. I know education is a critical foundation for children, especially in displaced communities. But what are some of the key barriers that prevent them from accessing high quality education?
Yeah, I think the first point that you said is so spot on. And I mentioned, as a Palestinian, the mantra that I grew up with, always hearing, education is the only thing you can take with you. Everything can be taken. Look at what's happening in Gaza today. Everything can be totally demolished, and what they can't take away from you is your education. So this has really been foundational. And you are at the mercy of so many things around you. You mentioned infrastructure. Absolutely. When you don't have infrastructure, you don't have the physical infrastructure of going to a school environment. And the school environment is not just for the learning, it's for the social support, it's for the community building. There are so many related aspects that come with going to school and interacting with peers and children and having mentors with teachers and what have you. So you have to have the, well, ideally to have a physical infrastructure, but that's often not there. What I've stepped into is a digital space, but it's a digital space in non-optimal situations. So the solution that Thaki has created is our specialty, I guess, is offline learning. So digital in places where internet connectivity is either not available, or it's too expensive, or it's too weak, or it's just not appropriately accessible to be able to do proper well engaging learning. So this is what for us we've moved to replicating that kind of learning environment in a situation where you don't have internet. You still need the physical infrastructure of the hardware, of the laptops. You still need power to power them. So along the way, we've also stepped into getting solar power provision to our schools in Lebanon in particular. There are so many aspects. You've got physical infrastructure, you've got the human capital, the human infrastructure to be guided. So how can, and things are going to ebb and flow with what's available and what's not available in situations of conflict, and nothing is predictable. So I think the people have to be agile, communities have to be agile in being able to adapt to what is available. And honestly, I've seen communities make magic out of nothing. um, yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, under the circumstances, yeah, probably they come up with so many creative solutions. I know you mentioned about education is one thing that can stay with you for life, for perpetuity. So obviously, you provide immediate relief and immediate help in terms of short-term education. But how do you make sure that there's self-sustaining learning systems in the communities for the long term? How
Yeah.
have you managed that process?
Indeed, and we started as emergency education and emergency response. This is how Becky started 10 years ago. So we started 10 years ago, thinking that ultimately, the communities would move back, either back to home or integrate into formal education systems. And that happens in time. But so many of the schools that we started with at the beginning, or learning centers, most of them are non-forming learning centers, sustained. Indeed, they developed and adapted to become sustained, long-term schools that provide very high quality education, and they're very grateful that technology was part of what allowed them to do that. This was one of the many components with Thaki's intervention in them being able to move on and sustain. There's so many factors at play, so we're just a part of the cog that helps move the wheel along. And I think the adaptability that we saw is listening and observing. We always keep in touch. We go into the field, we meet with the students, we meet with the teachers, we see we hear what they want, and we observe. Maybe they are saying things that they don't realize that they need, that we step into. And circumstances change all the time. There's no predictability either in the geopolitics of our region. We operate in the Middle East exclusively in the Levant area. So in the last 10 years, there's been and continues to be a lot of volatility. So things are, there are external constraints. And the schools adapt, the communities adapt to what they're able to do. And they have moved. I mean, so many of those schools had started with elementary schools and had been growing up, and they've now graduated these students. So a lot of the students the kids that we started working with, or they started engaging with Becky 10 years ago, are now in university. So they've been able to make that transition and to get there.
Fantastic. No, this is very, very inspiring. From all the work that you've done, can you share some success stories and show how Thaki's model is impacting children and teachers, especially on the ground?
Yes, certainly. And with the teacher, I'll start with teachers and saying that, especially when we started in the early years, teachers didn't have confidence and didn't have high skills in digital, and their comfort and their experience with digital was really limited to their phones. So we worked hard to develop teacher training resources and a platform, in fact, to give tools for the teachers and to give them confidence and to understand how to apply digital within their lesson preparations, within the classroom. And we've seen a huge change. And of course, with COVID, there was a big uptick in teachers, probably globally, in becoming much more comfortable in ICT and ICT pedagogy. And so that's, in itself is great. And we're just seeing how comfortable teachers are. They utilize AI, as do the students, by the way. And students, maybe I'll just pick on a couple of examples. There are some young women who finished high school, and one went on to data science and security and computer science studying at university because they were exposed to technology and they fell in love with it. And there's another young woman, Manal, who's now freelancing uh, graphic designer. And she was introduced to the tools and to technology in her high school while she was working on Thaki, and she just totally fell in love with the sphere and has now built a very successful career and is supporting her family while still living as a refugee in graphic design. So these are just two of so many stories of
These
success.
stories, yeah, no, I can understand because you've been doing it for so long. So, from your perspective, what role does digital literacy play in building confidence and long-term empowerment among displaced learners?
I would say, I mean, displaced learners, regular learner, and this is what we're trying to get to, that situations of disadvantage, situations that put people in non-optimal circumstances, we really want to level the playing field where the, children who have had unfortunate events happen to them have the same chances as children who've got all the privileges in the world. And digital today is a major component. If you don't have the digital tools and the skills, then you're going to be left out entirely of the future, unfortunately. So I think it's super important that the children are comfortable and are familiar in these digital environments so that they grow up also being digital natives like like children mostly across the globe are today. And so I think one of the things that we try to bring forward with our teachers, and one of those lessons or that we try to impart, or these values of to be safeguarding with digital as well, because digital can be You can go into very negative directions with digital as well, as we know, across all sectors. So being mindful, being careful, and applying digital optimally so that it can help with engagement, it can help with explaining, things like videos, drag and drop kind of tools can really help a child, anybody, understand things better. I know for myself, I often resort to the video tutorials if I'm trying to learn something rather than going to reading what it says. So I think this is even more applicable to young learners.
And like you said, seeing is believing, seeing is what makes it a lot easier to absorb an idea, concept. So I can totally understand. Just switching a little bit of gears about what the future might look like. How do you see the intersection of sustainability and education evolving in the coming decade?
We need to get a lot better than our trajectory. I think we're headed in some ways from a sustainability and education technology. I'm a little bit worried about the trends. We talk about AI. AI is extremely heavy energy consuming. Things are getting better, but we're going to be consuming so much more power. We should be really moving towards, I hope we're going to be moving more towards truly green systems that allow this power generation if we're going to continue along those lines. And I think just so power, how technology is built, the hardware that we utilize, a lot of the hardware is built to be disposable. Unfortunately, it's built not in a cyclical fashion. It's built just in a waste fashion. So I really hope that sustainability, and it may have to be through regulation if it's not done through commerce, because commerce is leading towards buying more rather than reutilizing and maximizing the tools that we have. So I think I'm not sure which way we're headed, but I think there are things that we can do to make sure that things go in a different direction with circular computing systems, with utilizing things to the greater extent, to having less power demand, having green power, um, things like that.
So would you say that the circular economy principles like reusing technology can help create more inclusive and maybe environmentally conscious education system, especially in the region that you mentioned?
That's the backbone of our operations. So what we do is we get the used laptops from mostly businesses, and we give them a second life. We do a lifetime extension. Okay, they're not getting the latest hardware, the latest tools, but often, I mean, it's good enough. It's good enough for what we need to do. They don't, unless they're going to be doing heavy duty rendering and heavy duty coding, then they would need much higher, maybe higher spec computers, and that could also be possible at some point. But there are perfectly good devices that we have introduced a circularity. So that is absolutely the core to what we do. But I'm very mindful also of the e-waste, so the end of life cycle, that the communities in which we operate don't end up paying that price of e-waste, which is very difficult to properly dispose of, because there are a lot of toxins and there is a lot of materials, both valuable and extremely dangerous to both human and environmental health. So that loop needs to be closed completely and properly, rather than just it becoming, here's a dumping ground like happens in a lot of countries. We absolutely don't want that to happen.
Totally understand. So, from just another quick look of the future, what are some of the innovations and partnerships that excite you most, especially in relation to the future of education for displaced children?
I think it's going to be how to uh, work in circumstances of uncertainty. We work in situations of extreme uncertainty and unpredictability, and we, meaning the communities in which we operate, are at the mercy of what happens outside of them, beyond their control. And often these are geopolitical influences that cannot be predicted, and they cannot do anything about them. So to be agile, to be able to adapt and adopt different technologies, different systems, different ways. Sometimes it could be technology. Sometimes you have to go entirely to analog. Sometimes you can be working remotely. Sometimes you have to continue your education on the go. So I think being agile, being adaptive, and not being so tied into one solution. I don't believe that, in any case, I don't believe there is one solution, be it one digital solution or one pedagogical solution that's going to address these problems. Things change all the time. Technology changes all the time, and the circumstances are changing all the time. So this adaptability is core and key to the sustainability of the education systems. And working with these communities, they inspire me the most. They're the leaders. I mean, they're just what they can do within the limitations that they have is mind blowing, honestly. So I think they are our teachers more than anything.
Fantastic. No, very, very inspirational. Obviously, we have come to the conclusion of our session, but before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you if there was a question you wanted to ask our audience and you wanted them to take one key action today, what would that be?
Well, thank you for asking that, because I started all of this. It's all about partnership. What we've done at Thaki cannot be done alone, and it couldn't be done with all of the various partners that we have. And I think we're probably hitting a business community with this podcast mostly, and we couldn't be doing it without our business partners who make the decision, whether it's ESG, whether it's they truly want to help, check tick boxes, whatever it may be. But give us your used laptops. You've got things that are liability to you. You no longer need them. Yes, you can sell them to a refurbishing company that makes profit out of them, or really consider, in our case, we would, those laptops that are no longer needed, 3, 4, 5-year-old laptops by businesses, when we get them in bulk, this allows us to operate. This is what allows us to do what we do. So my ask of the community would be, please consider Thaki and giving us your old laptops, old but yet functional laptops. Help us get them there. If you can't do that, maybe you can also find out, donations are always helpful in any fashion, and not just for Thaki. This circularity, whether circular tools, resources that you have, your brain power, skills that you have, tools that you've developed, the communities, the NGOs, civil society organizations can really benefit from those. So think about how to be circular in all of your operations. That would be amazing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. We will be sharing this information with a lot of business leaders all across the world, and I hope some of them will directly reach out to you. And I absolutely wish you and your foundation and all the people involved the very best. Once again, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, and really appreciate you having me here. Thank you.
All right, now we're done. So with that,
Okay.
thank you once again, and
Thank
we'll be in
you.
touch. And if there's
Okay.
anything I can do, please let me know, or you can tell one of my members, and I will make sure I'm available.
Super. Thank you so much. Really lovely seeing you again.
Likewise.
Appreciate
Thank
this.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.